everybody, and welcome to Freeology Friday. And I'm Derek Day, and he is.
I'm Aaron Tomlinson.
You goddamn right he is. And so we had we didn't really talk this week. We kind of like last minute show planning. But I had an idea. I mean, it's something that's really been kind of in my headspace for the last couple of weeks, and that's hunting and gathering in the information age. Because way back when, thousands, maybe millions of years ago, our ancestors either had to hunt or gather to eat, to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that over time, we get kind of conditioned to technology, to progress, to availability, and all of these things. Certainty, we get addicted to certainty. And so as a result, I think that our hunting and gathering skills have diminished. Now, before I go too far into this, let me say this. I'm not talking about hunting and gathering for food and necessities. What I am talking about is hunting and gathering for knowledge. Because in this age, we should be hunting for truth and gathering information, or gathering information and hunting for truth. And let me say this too. And Aaron, you may or may not agree with me on this. But I want to say this, that basically truth is kind of fluid. And I used to really believe that there were absolute truths about things, left, right, up, down, boy, girl, blah, blah, blah. And so what I'm learning is that pretty much any concept, at the very least, it's détente. Where, like how you turn a knob and it clicks. Those are the détentes. But I really believe that some things are not just détente, they're like totally rheostatic. In other words, it's a complete sliding scale between zero and infinity, or infinity between zero and max. And so what I think has happened is that we've gotten lazy. We've gotten complacent. We in this information age, we're used to having all of our data, all of our information served up to us in mega doses. And so as a result, we don't learn to actually hunt for or gather that which is really important. And the proof of that is that when you look at science versus conspiracy, because you would think, now the conspiracy theorists, they'll say, hey, I am hunting, I am gathering, I'm searching for the truth. Right? Because I'm not just taking it from the mainstream media, but again, here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to kick it over your way, Aaron. Is that credible sources? I can't stress that enough. My man Aaron, you are a clinical counselor, and so if I need to know something about counseling human conditions, it is really incumbent upon me, knowing that you have the skill and the education that you do, to seek out your credible voice on these matters. Or if there's something wrong with my car, I need to find someone who is credible in repairing and maintaining BMWs. I can't take my car to the Chevy dealer and expect it to be serviced properly. So again, the conspiracy theorists, they think that they're really hunting and gathering, but what they're doing is they're going on wild goose chases. They're going down rabbit holes. And they're and in the Navy, we used to have this thing that we called the snipe hunt. In other words, when you were on a snipe hunt, you were actively looking for something that did not exist. So, with that being said, and before I kick it over to you, I'm just going to show everybody I'm having a Moscow Mule tonight made with TLC vodka, and that TLC doesn't stand for tender loving care. It stands for taste like chicken.
I love it.
Which it doesn't really. It tastes like vodka, but I guess like vodka in the scheme of alcohol is like the chicken of alcohol, right? Because it blends with anything. So I guess tastes like chicken. But Aaron, over to you, my brother.
Yeah, I'm drinking wine tonight. I already half a bottle in. Tells you what kind of day I've had.
Woohoo!
So yeah, that's interesting because if you think about it, conspiracy theorists are hunting and gathering, but not all hunting and gathering is created equal, and not all research is the same, right? And my mind went immediately to Occam's razor. I don't know if you're familiar with that or how many people are, but basically it's a principle that says the simplest explanation is usually the correct explanation.
Right.
So if you find litter on the road, then you can explain it by somebody threw litter out their window, or you could say a space alien decided to try something and dropped it there. And it's interesting because the formal definition, part of the nuances, sorry, I'm a little congested tonight, but part of the principles in Occam's razor, which is a principle for evaluating information and data, is the fewer entities, when two explanations are presented, the one that has the fewest unknown entities is usually the correct answer. So you don't know how that trash got there. Maybe the wind blew it there. But if you had to choose between someone threw it out their window driving on the highway or a space alien dropped it out of their ship, both are possible. Both are unknown aliens, but we do know that cars exist and that they go past that location on the highway, thousands of them a day, right?
Yep.
So Occam's razor would say, then the most likely explanation for that is somebody threw it out their window. Or you could say the wind blew it there, maybe if you want to. But then you might have to look for other types of evidence to show that, maybe the wind's not blowing that day or something. So, I'm just pulling that out of thin air to kind of illustrate for people that aren't familiar with that principle.
Yeah. The
problem with conspiracy theories is they're hunting and gathering information, but they always, without exception, if you just analyze the conspiracy theory, always without exception, there are missing elements, and those missing elements are the key to the conspiracy. Meaning you don't know the who, what, where, maybe, in the sense. So take, JFK assassination. There are some things that could definitely point to conspiracy when you dig into it. I think especially the fact that Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald. That's a little fishy, for sure. But if you want to have certainty, there's gaps in that information. Was there a shooter in the grassy knoll? Well, maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Was the CIA involved? Was the mafia involved? Those are unknown entities, right? And you have to start piecing those together. So trying to take a conspiracy theory that most people are familiar with, but if you analyze all of them, at the end of the day, they depend upon information that hasn't been hunted or gathered because it's not readily available or verifiable. And those are usually the key components to prove that it's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like one of the things about hunting and gathering, speaking of our ancestors, would hunt where they knew animals would be found,
Hmm.
and they would gather where they knew good food could be obtained.
Good point.
And again, what has happened with humanity today is that we have not adequately defined our hunting ground.
Mm.
We haven't adequately defined our gathering place.
Hmm.
And so what happens is, like there's a parable in the Bible about the wheat and the tares, and it was one of my favorite parables in the Bible, because what I learned was that tares, there's also another name, a more modern name for it, is called darnel, and that darnel and wheat, they look identical when they sprout.
Hmm.
It isn't until they bear fruit that you could tell the difference. That when the kernel of wheat actually begins to develop in the bud, and the same in the darnel. In the darnel, it's speckled with black, and it's toxic. It'll make a human sick, but it kills animals. Animals that small animals, squirrels, possums, and such, raccoons, that if they eat it, they'll die. And so we're going out, and instead of applying some filter to our hunting, applying some filter to our gathering, that what happens is we go out and we harvest toxicity.
Yeah.
We harvest toxic information. And then here's the other thing is that uh, I've learned this too, that when, especially this was very common with the gatherers, because they weren't as active as the hunters. So they would eat and get fat. They'd store body fat.
Hmm.
And what would happen then is that made them susceptible to predatory animals,
Right.
or predatory people. And one of the things that happens that in the information age is that people get fat on information. In other words, you're just gathering so much to the point where you're not able to process it properly. You're not able to digest it, if you will. You're basically hoarding it,
Hmm.
and you get, these kind of people are the ones that get hit with what we call analysis paralysis. They have
Yes.
so much information that they can't render a good decision. So
Right.
anyway, I just want to throw that out there, because there are two things. There are people that starve for information, and there are people that get fat on it.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. Hold on one second. I'm looking something up here real quick. So I was going to try and give a real life example that I heard from somebody. I messaged them, and they didn't message me back yet. But there was a true story. Like, so you're talking about the gathering place, but the other thing about the gathering place is that people that are native to the area, at least most of the time, know what's good and what's not good for food. So maybe certain trees or bushes grow certain berries that you can consume, and others are
Mhm.
dangerous to consume. And friend of mine told me a story about a person in, well, I won't say where, but in the mountains here in Colorado,
Mm.
who gathered. They were going to, switch up their diet, and so they gathered up a bunch of leafy vegetables, and ended up serving it to the family or the husband, I think.
Mm.
This leafy vegetable that turned out to be poisonous, and I was texting him so I could ask him. I didn't remember what the vegetable or what the plant was. So here's someone that just goes out in an area, right, and gathers up, like you said, poisonous leaves, and says, "Oh, this looks like good food. This looks just like spinach or other kind of green leafy lettuce. Let's try this in the salad." And if I remember correctly, the husband was in pretty bad shape. I think they had to fly him by helicopter or something
Wow.
to a hospital. So the point there would be, depending on other people who have knowledge based on their experience. So like you brought up with me having studied and practicing clinical psychology and clinical counseling, I've been somewhere before. Mm-hmm. I've done my research. There's a difference between I'm doing research and I've done my research, right?
Yeah.
And I know I got quality research, and and so again, this idea, and this is the problem with the information age, is that everything's available. You can gather up poison ivy, make a salad out of it if you want to, hypothetically speaking, right?
Yeah.
Or you can, maybe another example would be mushrooms. Is that mushroom healthy to eat, or is it poisonous, or is it going to make you hallucinate? And you have to rely on someone who knows, either from experience or because that information has been handed down, to know what's good to consume and what's not good to consume. And that's the problem with the information age, and with Google and YouTube and all that stuff, is you can search for all kinds of things. And sometimes I know this, Derek, but I found out that on a lot of topics I don't even know the right questions to ask, much less whether or not am I qualified to evaluate the information. I'll give you a great example with us and our broadcasts. We did one a while back on religion being the root of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And my initial thought was, oh, Derek's kind of lost it on this one, because you suggested that. He just has his appetite for hammering religion just needs to be satisfied. So, it passed through my gray matter. And then I thought, no, this is Derek. Like he doesn't get, shall we say, caught with his pants down intellectually a lot, or as far as information goes.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and did a Google search, and sure enough, we ended up doing a whole episode and talking about it. But that's an example of, I didn't know enough about Russia. I didn't know enough about Putin. I didn't know enough about the Ukraine or their history to even know the right questions to ask. And yet, part of me at least was automatically dismissing that information. And if it hadn't been that I trust the source, I would have just dismissed that information and moved on, right? So my point was, I didn't even know enough to know. For example, if I'm not mistaken, Ukraine is the country. The Ukraine is a territory that includes other regions and areas that are not part of Ukraine. And so, I always catch myself referring to the country as the Ukraine, without realizing there's a difference between the Ukraine and Ukraine, and something else that I had to learn, right? So I have to understand I'm a beginner at this stuff. So if I'm going to consume information really quickly, and that's the other part of this, right? Because we live in such a fast-paced society. Everybody knows I work at the university, so I counsel students and younger people, young adults. And, dating is a totally different deal now. When you and I were dating,
Oh boy, yeah.
Because they go on dates that never end. Used to be you had to call, if you were going to call somebody, you had to call them, and they had to answer the phone. They had to actually be there.
Yeah.
And, when you were younger, you had to talk to mom or dad usually first. You had to get through the first sort of screening. And then you had to set the time and the date and all that stuff. And then you had to show up, You couldn't be on the way and have a flat tire or something and call and text and say, hey, I'm running late. You go out on your date, you drop your date off, whatever. The old rule of thumb used to be don't call them the next day. Remember that?
Yep.
But nowadays they go out, do whatever they're going to do, and by the time they're home, they're Snapchatting pictures. Oh, it was such a great time. Oh, wasn't it wonderful? I hope you sleep well. Yep. Yeah, you too. And then the next morning, good morning, I had such a wonderful time last night. And then they just keep this ongoing conversation all the time. So much so that if you don't hear from somebody, you automatically assume it was a bad experience for them.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I saw is that they cycle through relationship patterns. What used to take us 2 or 3 years to cycle through, the new relationship energy, the infatuation, the ugly side, the rub, the conflict, the heartbreak, that would take a couple of years.
Yeah.
Back in the day, now they can do it in 3 months.
Yeah.
And go through
Weeks.
the whole cycle. Yeah. And so I don't know what that has to do with any of this, but
It's the wine.
yeah, I know. I don't know where I was going with all that. But I think at the end of the day, the point I'm trying to make is we don't know what we don't know. Therefore, we don't even know what to ask. Okay, I remember what it was. I remember I knew it would come back to me. What I mean by this is everything happens so quickly. There's this instant response, this instant gratification. If you want a song, again, back in the day, you had to go to the music store. You had to hope they had the album in that you wanted. Otherwise, you remember the cassette
Or
tape?
listening to it on the radio. You had to wait for your song to come on and be sitting there waiting to hit the record button.
That's what I was just going to say. Now you can just download it, right? So it creates in the mind this sort of quick, instant, everything is right there. And so when it comes to hunting and gathering information, we have a tendency to bypass a lot of those areas, and we make snap judgments and snap decisions and snap opinions. It's just like I caught myself doing. Oh, come on, Derek just wants to take another shot at religion and this current event, and he's connecting dots that maybe don't connect. And then I Google it, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah, you thought I was on the conspiracy wagon.
But if I didn't have the patience to do that, you see what I'm saying? Like I didn't snap to a judgment. That thought entered my gray matter, entered my mind, and then I thought, well, but this is Derek, so let's, it's worthy of investigation, right? And I don't think we do that today. I think we just get in for, oh wow, that's cool. This matches with this, and this goes with this, and oh yeah, these pieces fit together over here, and then we call ourselves enlightened and awake, and think we've got information that nobody else has. And at the end of the day, what kind of conspiracy that's really worth its weight in anything in terms of conspiracy, like you believe in guys that can pull this massive international conspiracy off, and yet your crazy uncle on YouTube in his garage knows all about it,
right?
And you're finding out about it on YouTube, and somehow they're smart enough to pull it off, but they're not smart enough to keep it from the crazy YouTube guys. Like that just doesn't compute for me,
right? And that's, again, like credible sources, right? One of the things that's a real challenge is that we talked about this in a previous episode about the need to be right. Why people are determined to be right, and they want to be right even at the expense of what's right.
Yes.
And so what happens is you're so doggedly determined at proving your point that everything you look for now at this point, you're not looking for revelation,
right?
You're looking for reinforcement, confirmation bias. And the thing that I liken that to is that in drug addiction, there's a phenomenon called chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
Where the person goes after the high that they got the first time. And it's also like that with sex. You basically, your sexual paradigm can be fueled by an experience, your first or an early sexual experience. So now you're just chasing that. And we take that same approach to information. That in other words, when I looked for this here, I knew that this was true, or I believed that it was true at that time. Therefore, now everything that I ingest has to be something that reinforces that thought, because that, and excuse me, people don't realize is that, there are pleasure centers in the brain, and information is just like food. It's like sex. It's like drugs. It releases dopamine. Right. And once you've experienced this, now you want to go back and try to find it again.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to find new information that expands your envelope, broadens your horizons, you're just looking for something that's going to confirm what you believe to be true, whether or not it is true.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, one of the things that I think is really dangerous about the information age is that because data is so readily available, so pervasive, so prevalent, that you can go out and you can scratch the itch of any confirmation bias that you may have.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about, uh, I just got the text back from my friend. It was hemlock. So this person had gathered up a bunch of hemlock leaves and
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because right now in the southeastern part of the United States, there is an invasive species of hemlock. And so there was this guy that was out weed whacking, and he was doing it in a hurry because, hey, me and my wife, we got some other shit we got to do. So he's out there whacking weeds, and all of a sudden he passes out and he has to go to the hospital. And they're trying to figure out what happened because this guy is healthy. He runs marathons and all of this stuff. And then, but all of a sudden he's, you know, damn near dead. It was hemlock. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So she fed it to him in a salad.
Holy fuck. and you know that could go sideways in a lot of ways because then law enforcement could get involved and say, hey, you are trying to kill your husband.
Damn right. Yeah. Well, that was the other part. My friend was like, it was hemlock. Why are you planning something? It is possible. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I mean, what, just listening to you talk right there, you're talking about Bible study.
Yeah.
With that confirmation bias or that self-serving bias, I'm going to find the passages and the verses that support what I think and believe, and I'm going to ignore all the rest of the stuff. You know, we all do that. Everybody cherry picks the Bible. You can either, if you're going to teach from it or whatever, you can either consciously know that you're cherry picking,
Yep,
or you can try to convince yourself and others that you have the absolute truth. And I agree with you, by the way. I think that there is no, absolute truth. Everything is relative. Everything is a complexity. Everything exists in nuances and tensions, and things are way more complex than we want to
admit,
realize or recognize. And one of the ways I try to illustrate that is like, if I were to ask you, Derek, just right now, what time is it, Derek? Could tell me what time it is?
It's 6:39.
No, it's not. It's 5:39.
Aha. And we are both right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think you're right. Like we get an idea, we get it. Oh, and I want to comment on this too. Like the chemical release in the brain is a very real thing. One of the reasons that addicts, like somebody who's truly addicted, they lose the high completely. And what they're dealing with now is the withdrawal symptoms. And so they're using the substance to keep the withdrawal symptoms at bay. And so they can be, high or drunk or whatever, but they act relatively normal. And they're just using to stave off the withdrawal symptoms.
Yep.
But so what happens to them, or people that use MDMA, that use, Molly or ecstasy a lot, they can completely deplete their dopamine. Completely.
Wow.
And so what happens to them is they have no zest for life. They have no ability to feel good at all. Or in the case of people who are addicts, they can't feel good at all without the substance. And information does the same thing, and especially information that's exciting. I mean, maybe at the end of the day, life is just kind of boring. I mean, maybe a lot of this stuff, it is what it is. Maybe COVID is a virus that just came from bats, and people freaked out about it, and we're where we're at now. I mean, maybe that's just all it is, But it's so much more exciting to think, oh no, this was crafted in a lab in Wuhan, and Fauci and Bill Gates are conspiring together to inject nanobots and everything. I mean, it's so much more exciting to think that we live inside of a science fiction movie,
right,
or a spy novel, and we're somehow on the good side, than maybe to deal with the unpredictability, randomness, and downright boring aspects of life. And so you got to watch that too. You got to watch. I mean, because like I didn't study a lot in school. Fortunately, I didn't have to study a lot to keep a decent GPA. But when I did have to study, it wasn't enjoyable. Like, like studying sucked, right? Like I wasn't getting not endorphins, but I wasn't getting the dopamine highs and all that stuff. And so sometimes research is that way. It's not this exciting thing. And so when we go on the internet, we're getting excited. Oh, I got this and I got this and I got this and I got this. And it builds us up. And I'm an enlightened one. I'm an awake one. All the rest of you are dumb sheep.
Right. And that's funny how, people get addicted not only to the information, but from what the information does. Mm-hmm. It's funny, like, guys, not just guys, people that use steroids, right? Because the steroids at one point, they make them feel good because like the pain of joints aching goes away, the pain of muscle strain, it goes away. But then all of a sudden you've built all this muscle and you're able to do superhuman feats. So you're not only addicted to the substance itself, but you're addicted to what it does for you.
Great analogy.
And that's what happens is like, what I call this the smartest person in the room syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. Because have you ever been in the room with this one person that just seems to really have a grip on everything? I mean, whether it be relationships, whether it be money, whether it be career, this person just seems to absolutely have their shit together. And so at a certain level, I think that we look at people like that. And here's the thing, people like that are not like that all the time. Nobody's on all the time.
Right. Exactly.
But they're on in that moment, and you get addicted to that person, their personality at that moment. And you're thinking, holy fuck, I want to be like that. And so what happens is that every time going forward that you're in a social situation, you want to be the smartest person in the room, or you want to be the most interesting person in the room. And so now whatever it takes to achieve that, you go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think next week I'm going to have a Deckies.
Yeah. Hey, that's, but you have to grow out your whiskers a little bit, man.
Yeah, I can grow a decent thing in about a week.
Yeah. So you could be the most interesting man in the world.
Be the most interesting man in the world on the internet.
Stay thirsty, my friends.
I absolutely love the analogy with steroids that, you get addicted to what it does for you. You get addicted to what it can do. It's such a great example, Derek. So we've talked on the negative side of this. Let's talk on the positive side of this for a while. On the one hand, we have access to immediate gratification, like I was talking about with the dates and the music. I saw Marianne Jenke said that she would fax something to the DJs and they play the song. And I'm like,
yeah, I remember that.
We did not have fax machines. I don't know about y'all, but I'm just telling you, in Avondale, Colorado, we did not have fax machines. We didn't know such a thing about fax machines, but you could call, make a request, but the line was usually busy.
Well, when I did talk radio in Norfolk, Virginia, we had the telephone number that you could call and join in the conversation. Or if you weren't socially adept, you could send a fax. And the producer would be by the fax machine and the phone switchboard. And, if a fax came in, he'd bring it right into the studio.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I'm thinking back to, like disco days. I'm thinking back to middle school, 12, 13, Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie.
Yep.
Chicago.
Oh man, I, let's just stop there for a second. I love Chicago. And you know, if there is a band that has
Mm,
a formulaic sound,
mm,
and
mhm,
I don't think that they cultivated this formulaic sound. I just think that that was their groove.
mhm.
But it's like when Chicago comes on the radio, you and there is no ambiguity. You know, like for example, you might hear something by by Todd Rundgren, and you might think Steely Dan. But you don't get that kind of ambiguity with Chicago. I just had to throw that out there.
You know
You
what?
just
You know
took
the other band that comes to mind,
who's
ironically,
that?
also named after a city, is Boston.
You know, Boston, yeah, more than a feeling. I mean, basically everything that they make, you know, you know that it's Boston.
Yeah, I mean, even the guitars and stuff just sound different. It's just an iconic sound.
Yeah.
Uh,
But anyway, back down memory lane.
yeah. Anyway, so, um, but on the positive side of this, you have access to information. Like you don't have to go to the library and go. Remember Okay,
Oh my, come on, man, go there, go
remember
there.
the Dewey Decimal System,
Hell
and
yeah.
remember having to get periodicals, like trying to search through periodicals to find information for research paper. I mean, but the kid, like, what it took us to write a research paper, right? I mean, you had to go to the library, you had to dig through the periodicals and the Dewey Decimal System, and you had to sit there and write your notes by hand.
Yeah.
And then you had to sit down at a typewriter, like a Smith Corona, and there was no, word correct. There was no spell check. You messed up.
You didn't have whiteout back then.
Our teachers wouldn't accept it. If you had whiteout on your paper, they wouldn't accept it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they were hardcore. Maybe it was just me. I don't know. But
I didn't have teachers like that, but I mean, a whiteout was my friend.
oh, dude. No, by the time I was doing it, we had cartridges, right? So you had the ink cartridge that went in while you're typing, and then you had a whiteout cartridge you can insert, and it would go and just precisely go over the letter. And it was a little bit harder for the teachers to figure it out then.
But you know what? I had a typewriter. My last electric typewriter, it was an IBM Selectric, right? That I bought at a
Uh,
GSA auction, but it had a correction feature that it had a ribbon with whiteout in it. So you could hit backspace and white out your mistake and just keep on going. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Hey, by the way, Chicago was the first concert I ever went to that I can remember that I actually chose to go to. That my parents
Really?
didn't drag me to. My parents drug me to Dolly Parton and Ricky Rodriguez and some of those, but the first one I ever went to by choice was Chicago. I think I was like 12 years old. No,
Well,
no, I wasn't. I was like 9 years old.
let me tell you, I learned about Chicago from my stepdad, Douglas Robles. I'm like, here is a black dude that listens. He listened to the Carpenters. He listened to
Wow.
Chicago. He listened to the Eagles. He was really musically diverse.
Yeah.
And so whenever I think about Chicago, I can't think about Chicago without thinking about my stepdad. We called him Buddy. And so anyway, that I'm having a moment here.
It's all right, man. We're digressing. We're just chilling. We're just chilling with some wine and some chicken.
Yeah, tastes like chicken vodka.
All right, but so the other side of this is now you can sit down. You don't have to go to a library. I mean, you can download books, you can download podcasts, you can get on YouTube, you can go to Google, you can you can search periodicals, you can look for scholarly articles.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed how many people don't even understand or know what a scholarly article is, or why it's important. All of that is at our fingertips. Like you have access to the world of information. So in that sense, our gathering field, right, is universal. Our gathering field is immense.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it requires different skills. I'm going to run this by you. I got this thing in me about education because, my kids are going through school, and I'm not so sure there's value anymore in teaching some of the things that we were taught. And I don't want to be, somebody's going to disagree with me somewhere, but most of what I was taught, let's use
No, go ahead, man, because I'm with you.
Let's use geography as an example. Like, I remember having to memorize all the states and the capitals. Like, who really gives a fuck what the capital of Mississippi is?
Yeah.
Or, you know what I'm saying? And yet we had to memorize all that information. Now they have it at their fingertips. And so I think, why don't we have classes that they take every year on information technology that is required learning, and they learn how to effectively use Google. They learn how to effectively use whatever the latest things are. They learn how to navigate social media, because it's in their hands, right? And you don't need why teach a kid multiplication tables,
right?
When they've got the calculator or whatever right here in their hand. And so I think we're missing a boat. I think we have a 1950s paradigm of education in the schools while we're living in the 21st century. And I think that there needs, just like we've talked about how the Constitution needs to be totally rethought.
Yeah.
I think the entire education system in America needs to be completely rethought and laid out and adapted to the culture that kids are living in right now. I think we're doing them a real disservice.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And not only that, you and I talked about this privately, like learning about emotional skills. Yeah. Nobody teaches that. And here, we're in the 21st century where information can be had immediately. Everything is at your fingertips, but you don't know how to emotionally process it.
Right.
Because here's the thing, you see something that triggers you. It triggers a response. And this response that if you don't understand the trigger, it could cause you to react in a negative way. But again, it's like learning things that we know by rote, state capitals, multiplication tables, history, even psychology.
Yep.
From the standpoint of the great psychiatric minds, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But so all of these things, I really think, this is me, that in this age of information overload, that we need to develop a sense of stoicism.
Yeah. Go there for a bit.
Yeah. So that we're going down the path. Imagine if say Plato or Aristotle or Socrates had access to the information that we do. How would that shape their philosophy? How would that shape their teaching? How would that shape what they wrote, their legacy, right? So basically, if we turn back and we say, okay, I'm going to apply a filter of logic, of reason, and EQ. We make a big deal out of IQ,
right?
But apply this EQ, emotional quotient filter, to all of this, and we say, okay, now based on how this information is filtered through these three gates, now this is how I'm going to process, or how I'm going to process the information to do something. And I think that I really believe that we need to go back and look at how. Okay, let me say this. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, because here's how we operate. We operate according to protocol. We develop a protocol for everything. We develop a protocol for how we process information. We develop a protocol for emotions. We develop a protocol for our sexuality. We develop all these protocols. But I think that we will be better served with a heuristic. That in other words, I'm not trying to fit things into a silo. I'm trying to understand with an empathetic mind why this is the way it is and how this affects me, how this impacts me, and then extend that and say not only how this affects or impacts me, but how does this affect or impact those who are near me?
Mm-hmm.
I really think that, and I'll say this, right, that if I had to do it all, my degree is in information systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? My
Yeah.
advanced degree is in information systems. But if I had to do it all over again, Aaron,
Mm-hmm.
I would do it in humanities or liberal arts
Mm-hmm.
because then I learn how, not just learn how to do, but I learn how to appreciate and to apply. And I think that one of the things that we're lacking in the information age is, okay, how do I apply this not only to my life but to the lives of others around me? How do I make me better and also make my community or make my environment better?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's
Well, so man, you bring up such a great point, and I love what you just said, because at the end of the day, as someone that works at a university, I can tell you, and I'm sure it's true in high school and middle school and grade school levels. I come from a family of teachers, school counselors. It's just in my blood. And at the end of the day, we're educating people for a career. We're not educating them to become human beings, to become fully developed, fully self-actualized human beings. And here's the shitty part about it. People that are teaching middle school today, maybe even people that are teaching high school today, have no idea, because things are changing so fast economically and in the job market. Artificial intelligence and machines are replacing a lot of jobs. Jobs are being shipped overseas, whatever. Technology is changing so quickly. They don't even know what they're equipping, what careers or what jobs they are equipping this generation for. And so, talk about something that's misguided. Think about it. I got my major in information systems, right? So I could get a job working in that field. I got a degree in psychology and counseling, so I could work in that field. Humanities and liberal arts, that teaches you to be human. That teaches you to apply all the stuff that you just said.
Exactly.
And yet, at the end of the day, we're teaching people we're trying to prepare them for trades that may not even exist in 10 years, or jobs that may come into existence in 10 years that we don't even know what those jobs are going to be. And so I think we're just completely, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not shaming anybody. I mean, this is a very complex problem. We've been doing this the way we've been doing it for decades, and there's been a lot of innovations and improvements in education. So I'm not bashing anybody out there in education at all.
No.
Not at all. In fact, I honor you. I mean, you're my heroes, because
For real.
you guys get paid shit, and I know you know that.
Yep.
And yet you do that, and I'm so grateful. From the bottom of my heart, I'm grateful. So I'm not bashing anybody in education. I'm just saying I think the whole system needs to be just like religion, just like the economic system, just like the political system. It needs to let go of what was, and we need innovators to envision what can be.
Let me say this: evolution, right? The educational paradigm has to evolve to meet the needs of an information-based society. And right now we don't do that. And this is another thing too, that now there's a lot of talk about trade school and skilled trades, woodworking, plumbing, electrical, and all of that. And let me say this, because I work in information technology, right? And one of the things that is a up and coming part of my career space is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So in other words, we say we take machine learning and apply it to, like, say, a pattern of banking deposits. And so now a company with a huge cash position can use machine learning to drive AI to transfer money between bank accounts faster than we could ever do it.
Sure.
So what does that do? The person who has studied and got an advanced degree in finance, it has made them obsolete. But there's more, because people like me who develop the technologies for AI and ML, now AI and ML will ultimately replace me.
Mm.
Now, here's the thing, that if you are a plumber, if you are an electrician, if you are a metal worker, if you are a horticulturalist, there is no AI that will ever replace you. I mean, the reality is that AI can never really replace a plumber, a carpenter, or an electrician, or even better, a writer, a painter, a songwriter. You know, it's funny. Like, there's somebody did this this AI exercise where this AI was writing songs,
Mm.
and these songs were mechanically flawless. They had the right melody, they had the right harmony, everything, the right lyrics, but that the emotional content that goes into songwriting, that goes into carpentry, you know, it's like I've made a big deal out of my bookcases. and what's funny, I talked to the guy who did this, and do you know what his education was in?
No idea.
This guy is a fucking registered nurse. Not only that, he's a nurse practitioner.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but what you know, his dad taught him how to do woodworking and things like this, and so basically he reached a point where he had the compression of his job, of his career, became so much that he had to do something else. And so now what he does is he does all of this woodworking and you know, kind of stuff. And the thing is that, like, nursing, even nursing, they're talking about how AI may replace basic nursing, because AI can diagnose a patient based on his or her vitals. AI can look at the oxygen uptake of a person. AI can look at blood work, and actually, and honestly, they can even do things that the physician can do.
Right.
They get into that realm. But to build a cabinet, AI is, you're never going to have a robot that comes in and builds a stone fireplace. You're never going to get that, because AI cannot relate to the emotion of the laying of stones in a pattern. Because basically, when someone comes in and they do stonework, or they do brickwork, it's like these people, it's not just the technique, it's the emotion. And that was like when this guy did my bookshelves, he asked me, he said, well, what do you want? And I said, well, this is kind of like my vision, but I said, I want to defer to your creativity.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want this to be your artwork.
I bet he loved that.
And he did. And he killed it, man. He absolutely killed it. And so what I'm saying is, that in this information age, and this is the good part, is that there are things that big data will never replace. And this creates an opportunity for
Right.
you, the listener, the
Yes.
viewer, to actually do things that that this technology can't do.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that let me say this, that when it comes to what is artistic, what is creative, confirmation bias will never beat that.
Mm.
I mean, it's like for example, if you compare guitarists,
Mm-hmm.
if you say Larry Carlton versus George Benson,
Mm-hmm.
and you could talk about technique, and you could talk about fretting, and you could talk about the resonance and all of these different things, but at the end of the day, these two artists are unique and they're different, and your confirmation bias doesn't mean shit when it comes to comparing people like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point that I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's funny, Derek, because okay, we're talking about. I'm gonna bring this together. This is so
Come on,
cool.
man.
So one of my favorite old groups, music groups, is Styx,
Oh boy, yes.
and I remember a few years ago, Tommy Shaw, who was the lead guitarist and one of the lead singers for Styx, did a contemporary youth orchestra event where he went and this orchestra learned his music and he sang his songs with these kids, and the guitar solos were put to violins, and it's super cool, right? Wow. And there was an interview that I saw a couple of years ago where Tommy is going to meet with Daryl Hall. Daryl Hall has the coolest thing on YouTube, man. If you haven't seen it, it's like Daryl's house or something, and he gets these old artists.
I've seen that.
At his house, yeah, and they
Yeah.
played their songs and stuff. It's super cool, I think. And Tommy was going to be one of his guests, and so they're interviewing Tommy Shaw in the limousine, while he's going to Daryl Hall's house, and he admits that he can't even read a chord chart. That he can't read music, he can't read a chord chart. And so I came across this YouTube video with this orchestra, and they were doing "Fooling Yourself" from the Grand Illusion album, and this whole orchestra is playing this man's music, and it touched something deeply in me, man. I mean, I'm tearing up just thinking about it, because I'm like, this dude, this came from his soul. This was who he was. He didn't have any formal training or anything. He was just able to pick up a guitar. He was able to do arrangements, and I know he's part of a group, but the truth be told, Dennis DeYoung, the other lead singer for Styx, at least old Styx, he was an accordion player. He'd never had a piano lesson.
Wow.
And they were a group by the age of 15, all of them, the early guys. So here's guys without the professional training, without the education, right? But they're putting out something like that's just what was in them. And I just thought, man, what if we could all tap into that, right? What if we could all tap into our unique sound, so to speak? It may have nothing to do with music, but we could all tap into our uniqueness and our unique vibrational signature, whatever that is. Find out that thing that's buried inside of us that doesn't need to be educated into us from the outside in, but just flows from the inside out. What kind of world could we create?
But dig this, man. You see, you're on a roll here. That's the whole hunting and gathering thing, right?
Right.
That I'm going to hunt for and gather that which causes me to fully express myself. I saw this thing. I saw it recently, but I saw it a few years back when James Brown was still alive. He did a duet with Pavarotti to the song.
Oh, wow.
This is a man's world, And here Pavarotti is a classically trained operatic vocalist.
Yeah.
He is a vocal powerhouse and a musical, he's a musical encyclopedia unto himself. And here he is with James Brown, 6th grade education, and no musical training.
Love it.
But it literally brought, and I'm going to tell you something. This Is a Man's World is one of the most fucked up songs in the history of music. It is very, misogynist, is very chauvinistic, right? But when he and Pavarotti did this thing was magical. It was absolutely and that's the thing, guys, gals. If you tap into your inner hunter-gatherer and you say, okay, and let me say this too, make yourself lean, make yourself hungry. Because see, when you're hungry and you're lean, you're going to go out and you're going to gather, you're going to hunt for that which causes the best expression of yourself to come out. That is, I mean, that is powerful. And so many of us, we've been trained, we've been conditioned not to hunt or gather, but to simply watch this, right? Supermarkets have taught us that we neither need to hunt nor gather.
True.
You can go to your local Safeway, Kroger, Fry's, Whole Foods, Sprouts, and you can completely immerse yourself in that, and you can get everything you need without having to know anything about hunting or gathering. Now, let me say this: one of the best lessons that I ever learned was how to hunt. And I actually enjoy hunting, but I don't hunt for sport. When I go hunting, I'm gonna eat whatever I kill, right? Because I honor the animals and what they are giving to me. So I'm going to hunt. And the same thing with gathering. I've learned how to plant food, how to grow food, how to feed myself. I know if we have an apocalypse, I'm good, because not only can I hunt with a gun, I can hunt with a knife, I can hunt with a bow, I can hunt with my bare hands. Fuck. I know how to do it. And if I need to grow something, I know how to grow stuff. But at the same time, when it comes to the information age, I know how to hunt for the truth that is relevant to me. I know how to gather the information, the data that is relevant to me. And so as a result, and let me say this, I got to say this, I got to throw this out here, because one of the best things that has happened to my hunter-gatherer self was to get rid of all the superstition, i.e. religion. Because now I'm able to look at things in an objective way. And I can hunt and I can gather, whether it be information, whether it be food, whether it be whatever my need is, I know how to go get it. And at that point, I'm going to stop.
All right. Good stuff, man. I think, I can't add to that. I think maybe we should do an episode. This would be kind of cool. The future, is it a utopia or a dystopia?
Ooh, man, that's holy shit.
Just all this talking about AIs and all the shit that they can do now. Imagine in, virtual reality, I'm being told in 5 to 10 years, the technology is already here. In 5 to 10 years, we won't be doing this isn't Zoom, but it's a format similar to that. We won't be doing that. We'll be sitting virtually in each other's living rooms talking.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, think about this. Instead of going to visit your friends or your loved ones, that you spin up a session similar to this, and you're immediately immersed in this other person's presence.
Yeah. And that's 5 to 10 years away. What's 20 to 30 years down the road, or 30 to 60 years down the road? And some of it's scary. Some of it's really scary. And then you bring in, cloning and genetic sequencing and then the economic disparity. I talked to a person in England today, and he said that there is more childhood poverty in England. Childhood poverty is at its highest in England since the days of Charles Dickens.
It's the same here in the U.S. It's the same here.
And what we're talking about is machines replacing occupations. I saw a thing, and I don't know if there's any truth to this at all. This could be total bullshit. That's my disclaimer. I didn't research it. It could be complete bullshit. But I saw a thing about how they're trying to control the next surge of the pandemic in Shanghai, and people are not able to eat. People are starving, and they're just kind of quarantining them in this area. So we're seeing this escalation of the super rich. I'm already getting into that episode. Mm-hmm. And jobs being replaced. So yeah, is the future? What's the future? Is it a utopia or a dystopia? And what do we do?
You know what? Here's the thing. I think that we are at the crossroads of deciding whether or not it's utopia or dystopia. Mm-hmm. We're literally at that intersection that we can decide as a people what it's going to be. But
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say this, that I was looking at an article about the supply chain.
Yeah.
And how there is a narrative that says there is a shortage of truck drivers. And the reality is there is no shortage of truck drivers. What there is a lack of desire to pay truck drivers what they're worth.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, because what I was reading is that in the future, the only truck drivers, people that there will be, are the final mile drivers that drive the package to your home, or drive the package from an over the road situation to a depot, right? That because basically over the road trucks, that will ultimately be done by artificial intelligence. And Elon Musk and Tesla, one of the things that they had announced several years ago was this semi truck. Mm-hmm. that basically is electric and self-driving, like Tesla automobiles.
Right.
And one of the things that they were saying is that these Tesla trucks can actually intelligently join a convoy. Because once they're in line like this, and in Australia they do this, truckers will merge in behind other truckers to take advantage of slipstream of the lead truck. So the rest of the trucks in the train are more efficient as the result. So now you're talking about artificial intelligence that will be able to duplicate the same thing. And so truckers as a position will ultimately go away.
I know he's not the problem, but fuck Elon Musk. He's moving to Mars and fucking us.
You know what? I have this fucking love-hate relationship with Elon Musk.
I think most people do.
I mean, it's like when I saw him launch these Falcon rockets and bring the boosters back down to Earth and land them, I'm like, holy fuck, that's Buck Rogers come to life.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing that they're able to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's steadily screwing people.
Right.
So it's like,
I know.
like Teslas are awesome, but
Yeah.
he's fucking Tesla workers, and I'm just like,
yeah, I know. I think everybody's got that reaction to him. I want to. Joy Felix said, "If child poverty is in England, what do you say about Africa?" I want to address that because thank you for that, Joy. That comment, by the way. I've never been to England. I've got friends over there. I have been to Africa many times, and I have witnessed childhood. I have witnessed childhood poverty in Africa many times, and I was so heartbroken the first time we went at the things that we saw. And so we have for more than 20 years invested tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars into works that we could verify, works into one of the things that we did, Derek, when we would ever go into another country, we had a rule. I set this from the first day we set down our bylaws for our church. I said, we will not support missionaries. We will only go and be involved in mission work if we can do it with indigenous peoples. And everywhere we went, we worked with the people there on the ground. And so my heart, that touches a place in my heart. So I just wanted to respond to that, Derek.
So we're kind of at the end of things here. So I'll put the link in the chat. I'm going to put it here also in case anybody wants to join in. But this is where we're going to go through the comments and see what people have to say. Because here's the cool thing. I want to say this, and I really want to drive this home. Aaron, you are one of the most brilliant minds I know. And every time I get to spend time with you like this, it just reinforces what I already believe about you. But there are people out here that they have a story to tell, that they have a voice, and I want to make sure that those voices are heard.
Yes, I agree.
So let's see. Oh, who is this? Ogun Tolu Precious. He says, great. C. Rodriguez. I want to thank you because you're always here. You're always here. I mean, I can't remember when you've missed an episode. And I just want to tell you that we appreciate that. Isaac Gideon, thank you for joining. Marianne Jenke, I love you, girl. You hardcore. You are not everybody's cup of tea. But oh my goodness, you are one of the realest personalities out here. And I just want to I want to give my appreciation. William Albert, thank you for joining. William's been joining the last few weeks.
Thanks, William.
Let's see.
Brittany's on, but she says I'm extra late. Brittany Hill, she's another one that's really, really faithful.
Yep. I want to get Brittany on here. I want her to click the link. I do too.
That would be a phenomenal episode.
It will be. I mean, matter of fact, hey Brittany, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet for you, right? Just like what we did with Daryl. How about we have you come on and join us for an hour? You pour up your favorite libation, or if you don't have it, let me know and I'll mail it to you. But I think that would be just completely out cold. I would love that. Jeanette is on.
Yeah, she's faithful. Shannon Morris, she's another one.
Yep, I love Shannon. Shannon got promoted to be one of the admins of the Religious Trauma Recovery Group.
Just going to say that, doing a bang up job too.
Yep, and I was like, that they couldn't have made a better choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Marianne, you're just all in the spot. I tell you. And listen, Marianne, I'm going to throw this at you too. You can join in too. I know that you're really, you're really out cold, and you probably think that you'll upset a whole lot of people's apple carts, but fuck it. Come on and join in.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Let's see who else. Let's see. Yeah. Joy Chioma Felix. Yeah, we had addressed her, or but yeah, that I've seen child poverty in Africa that just absolutely broke my heart. I was in Port Harcourt, Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And Port Harcourt is an interesting place because that is one of the biggest oil producing places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are in downtown Port Harcourt, you can smell the sulfur of oil refinery in the air. And it's thick, and it's so bad that basically the EPA and OSHA here in the US, they would not allow that. But it's prevalent there. And I remember roads that were so bad that they looked like they had been cratered by rockets. And these roads full of water that is absolutely mosquito infested.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids out there with their pants rolled up to their thighs, selling bottled water and socks.
And what?
Socks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they're just trying to eke out a living. They're trying to feed their families. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck, these kids should be in school. They should be, or not even school. Let's take away school. These kids should be playing tag, or playing baseball or something, or soccer or whatever.
Dude, I mean, I'm passionate about this because it's one of my favorite places on earth, and the place we were most involved with mission work and that kind of thing. And I remember when we were over there in the van, and the cratered roads, exactly what you're describing.
Yep.
And I remember these little kids, man, banging on the window, Mzungu, Mzungu, which is Swahili for white person.
Wow.
Not sure if it's a slur or not. I don't know. But, and asking for money for school, or asking for an eraser. I'll never forget a kid asking, can you please give me an eraser?
Mm.
But I want to say this, and I really want to say this. On the flip side of that, I saw children who were happy playing with a stick. And I don't mean, they were just content to play with a stick. I mean, they were genuinely, the people that I was around, they were genuinely joyful in spite of their hardships. And we worked with the people there. And in fact, the group we worked with was the first indigenous Pentecostal group in East Africa. And it was also the largest group. And they were strict with us about, we don't want your charity, so to speak. We don't want your handouts. We want economic empowerment. And so we put together a conference. One of the conferences that we did, that we put together, was we sent businessmen and entrepreneurs over and had them do a whole economic empowerment conference.
Yep.
And then even had businessmen over here that were investing in the entrepreneurial spirit over there. The problem is the geopolitical game.
Yeah.
That keeps these people in bondage. So as much as even, we barely made a pebble bit of difference. Let me say
this too. I want to say this about my friends from sub-Saharan Africa, India, and Pakistan, because the missionaries that have come to visit you have really fucked your head up.
Yep.
Okay. Because what they taught you is that the only way you're going to sustain yourself is to ask for money from people. Let me tell you something that I did while I was in Nigeria. We had workshops over the course of a week, and basically we showed individuals how to develop a business plan and how to produce it in hard copy so that you could take it to a bank and obtain a loan to fund your business. And while I was there, we actually helped almost 80 businesses obtain funding to be self-sustaining. Now, my understanding is that of that 80, there are still 40
That's awesome.
that are in business now. And yes, that's only batting 500, but fuck, man, Ted Williams, the greatest batter in history, only batted 400.
Derek, from almost 2 decades of effort and work over there, that's phenomenal success. And again, it's not because of the people there. It's just because of the dynamics, the economic dynamics
Exactly.
of what goes on because of the, again, geopolitical bullshit that gets played out there. And, but yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know who Victor is, but he was in the green room and I selected him to join, but he's, for some reason, he's not showing up.
Come on, Victor.
So Victor, hang up and try it again.
I also understand because we visited, East Africa, Kenya primarily.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the animosity that colonized African nations feel towards the British and England. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's part of the issue there, but I totally get it. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
Terrible.
it's East Africa, West Africa, the same paradigm exists.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh God, the Cote d'Ivoire and what the French have done presently in the last decade or two to Cote d'Ivoire is criminal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's war crimes. Everybody's fixated on Putin right now, but there's war crimes that happen over there every day.
Listen, the United States of America is guilty of war crimes in Liberia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we you could talk about all of these, but I want to say this before we wrap up, and it's this, that take the time to understand what it is that you hope to understand. I really believe, we're not all called to know, understand, or operate in the same thing. Everybody's different. Aaron, you and I are different. We do different things in our professions, but whatever it is that you want to understand, that you pursue that with zeal, with enthusiasm, but with a rational mind. That you actually take the time to filter what it is that you want to know. And I really believe that if we can get to that point, I really believe that we can literally reshape the world.
Yeah, I do too. All right, my brother. Nobody in the green room, or
nobody in the green room.
All right.
Nobody wants to talk to us, Aaron.
God damn it!
I know. God damn it.
Let me last bit I'm going to say about Africa, just because it's stirring in me. One of the things that we saw, and the reason we withdrew, we pulled out. We don't do anything over there anymore. And here's why: because I'm blaming the U.S. primarily. I'm saying that the church in America shoulders the blame for this.
Yep.
But what we saw was, to a certain degree, we contributed to becoming kingmakers over there.
Yep.
In other words, we started working with ministries that I felt had a pure spirit. The only thing they lacked, they had the gifting. I felt at the time, the character. The only thing they lacked was the resources. And we started pumping resources to help them minister to the people. And they were ministering to the people. But this American thing got in there, at least in the group that I was with, of honoring the man of God. I mean, they took that thing to the nth degree of disgusting. And, give your tithes, give your offerings. If you give, God's going to bless you. And we had started with a church, I won't say where, of maybe a couple hundred when we started. The last time I was there, they had over 5,000, I think, members. And I don't know, the pastor's driving a Mercedes and living in a nice house. And
you know what?
The people are still suffering. And I just couldn't. So love it. Hope to go back someday, but we had to withdraw our support.
This is a funny thing that only in sub-Saharan Africa do you find preachers that live better than doctors, lawyers, and engineers.
Absolutely. Derek, that is absolutely 100% the truth.
It is absolutely mind-blowing. And let me say this. I want to call out my host while I was in Nigeria. Dr. Daniel Joseph Ubanabasi. This guy's an engineer by profession. He had offices in the Middle East and in Singapore, in addition to Nigeria. If this guy wanted to build a church, he could have had a mega ministry. But his church on a typical Sunday runs maybe about a couple of hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
And he's happy with that, because what he looked at his church as an empowerment station where people could come to not just go for the pie in the sky and the sweet by and by, but to actually accomplish something here on earth. And so my hat's off to people like that. But oh my God, we could do a whole show on third world ministry.
Yeah, we could.
We could.
A lot of experience with that.
Yeah.
But I want to do the dystopia utopia one first.
well, let's plan on doing that next week.
All right.
Utopia and dystopia, because
I'll have to study up on my futurism.
But I think that's pretty much it. There's nobody out here that wants to join in. But Aaron, once again, my brother, I love you, man. Thank you for being my friend and brother. That's all I can say.
Likewise, man. And in the meantime, peace and hair grease.
You goddamn right. All right. Love y'all. And like Aaron said,
I got to say it first this time.
You did. You're the man.
I snuck it in.